Great, and one of these fine animals could be yours.
We know we can count on you to do what Smokey says. Smokey says!
Only you.
No, you don't play with matches. That's not cool. Tell Mom and Dad to break them, stop them. Yeah, that's the rule.
And when your folks desire to build a fire, clear brush and branches away, and keep water nearby like you oughta.
Did someone say otter?
We're all counting on you.
Only you can prevent forest fires.
During the years that the music business grew, Bob worked full-time as a policeman for the City of Reading Police Department. Bob now reflects back on his time on the force.
I had a career that I wanted to get into that my father always liked, or at least thought he would like. But he was turned on because of defective vision in his one eye, and that was to be a policeman in Reading, Pennsylvania. So I had applied, and I had to wait a while, and I was selected, and I was appointed January the 30th, 1956, as a police officer in Reading, Pennsylvania.
As the music business began to prosper, Bob was afforded the opportunity to leave the police force full-time and place all his concentration on his music business.
You know, having money is nice, but when you have a lot of money, you buy a lot of expensive toys. And in my case, that's sort of what I did. What was food for one man is another man's poison. I love cars. I saved all my cars. Every car I bought, I kept, ever since my first new one. Airplane, I'm out for a drive. We see these for sale, I buy one. Didn't even know how to fly. Next day I went up with the money, and this was on a Sunday. He says, hey, he says, this is quite nice that you bought this. I said, wait a minute. I put my hands on top of his hands so he wouldn't touch my money. I said, the least you can do is teach me to fly. And he thought a while, and he didn't want to lose the sale, but he said, well, the least I can do, and this was in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. He said, the least I can do is get you good enough to solo it that you can take it away from the airfield. I said, okay. So I went up religiously every day until I learned to fly, and I could take it away on my own. And I'm a pilot since 1959 to the present. And the aviation's been very good to me. And I'm a great supporter of flying.
Why do you think your life story is more unique than someone else's life story?
My life story is very unique in what I experienced from a young boy on up. My first tragedy in life was losing my father at 16. Sorry to say it was a suicide. I never got over it. That's the first shot. Everything my dad wanted to do, I completed for him. He wanted to be a cop, I was a cop. He wanted to be a pilot, I was a pilot, and he did. He soloed an airplane under the GI Bill in 1947. And, but he never got his license because he had high blood pressure, and he never completed it, but I did for him. What he started, I finished. And he used to say, Bobby, look at my hands. He said, you want to work hard like me? He said, stick with music. He said, that's what you're good at. He said, stick with music. And I did, as you know. So I took his advice, but I miss him too. It's, sorry to say, it's a tragedy.
You've made the mention that your police experience be worthy of a movie. Why do you feel that way?
Being a cop, there was other cops as good as me, but not one better. You name it, I was involved in it, one way or another, sorry to say, from decapitations that I had to be on the scene and hold a human head when nobody else could stomach to pick it up, from fire, murders, prostitution raids, gambling raids, riots. I was in it, but I always came out on top, always. Any policeman that was with me, you never had to be afraid. That's true.
In 1964, Bob began his lifelong admiration for Mr. Showmanship himself, Liberace. The flamboyant entertainer poised a captivative inspiration to Bob, which became a turning point for his performing career.
As a policeman, I was assigned to any dignitary that came to Reading. And in 1964, I was assigned to Liberace for 1 full day. Well, it was only supposed to be 8 hours, but it turned out to be 15 hours. And that's how we became friends. That was in 1964. He did a concert at the Raja Theater, and I was assigned to him to make sure that nothing happened to him. And one of his things that stuck with me when he signed his autograph on his picture, he looked at me and he's drawing a picture of a piano, which is how I did his logo. And I said, boy, I said, how do you like to have a penny for every one of those you drew? Because he was so fast at it. He stopped and he looked up at me. He says, a penny? I said, yeah. He says, Buck, think big. And he looked at me and said, Bob, he said, you think big, you'll be big. You think small, you'll be small. And he really said that, so I listened to him and you saw what happened.
Bob flew to Los Angeles, California in 1988 with a one-way plane ticket. He said that he would return home driving one of Liberace's vehicles. Bob was attending the Liberace auction at the Los Angeles Convention Center. From an observer's viewpoint, how would you describe Bob's performance at the auction?
Bob Nye's action at the Liberace auction could be described as colorful, shining. The more attention put on him, the more he would shine. He had people from People magazine, World News Tonight asking for interviews. The crowd was with him, and the more the crowd applauded, the more he acted, the more he jumped up, the more he carried on. He got so excited and so wrapped up into the auction that he just outshined everybody and everything.
How would you describe Bob to a stranger?
To try to describe Bob Nye to anybody is just, it's really hard. Bob Nye is like a prism. When the light shines in, it reflects out in many different directions. And no matter which direction it goes, it's in a shining way. He's a shining example for a lot of people. In his musical field, he can move people with his emotions, the way he puts it through the piano. His salesmanship, he can sell a bald man a comb. He comes through that way. With his family, he's daddy. He loves his 3 daughters. He's very good with his children. And he's just a very outgoing, friendly, excitable, eccentric. Can't forget that word, because a lot of people have described Bob as eccentric, but it's part of Bob Nye. That is Bob Nye.
My experience at the Liberace auction in April the 9th, 1988 was fantastic. I bought his piano, for starters. And I was so excited after I got this piano. It was probably the last one he played at Radio City Music Hall with a full perimeter glass lid, meaning for the whole length of the piano. And I stood up on the chair and was waving everybody, and I was very happy. And then Liberace's sister-in-law, Dora, kissed me on the cheek, but she was only 2 rows away from me at this sale. And that was the beginning of it. In fact, it went that well that every day they had people from Peter Jennings' World News Tonight, I think, followed us around. Wherever we sat, wherever we went, they followed me around with a camera for the balance of the auction. And I bought very heavy. So I not only got his piano, we got his fur coat, the last one he bought 6 months before he died, and furniture, china, Picasso china, Waterford crystal, candelabras, costumes, beautiful costumes, and his truck. The last thing I bought was his truck. But that's sort of another story. But anyhow, at this auction, I bought his Chevy Cube van. He was an antique nut. He loved going around buying antiques, and he used his truck. He drove it. And it's a Chevy Cube van, and on his outside of this truck was his logo, the way he signed his autographs, and a keyboard that went all around the truck, and a Chevy emblem in the front was in mosaic mirrors. And it has a crystal chandelier in it that when you open up the door, it lights up, Italian crystal.